Welcome to Speak Up and Stay Alive RadiOh with author, speaker, and your host, Pat Rouleau.
Serving you a generous helping of everything you need to know to help you and your loved ones stay safe during any doctor or hospital visit.
The program is not intended to replace medical advice from a licensed professional, but rather to encourage you to become a well-informed participant in your health and well-being. And now, your host, Pat Rouleau.
Hello, and Happy New Year! I'm Pat Rouleau. Welcome to Speak Up and Stay Alive Patient Safety Radio. And this year is going to be fantastic. I just feel it. Don't you just love new beginnings? Something as simple as a new calendar always refreshes me as I look at it as a clean slate. Day after day to create the kind of life I want for myself, my family, my friends, and that includes you. And I encourage you to think in this same way, because as we know, our thoughts create our reality. So I figure, why wallow in what ifs, poor me's, and if onlys? You know, your brain is an amazing thing. Yet for all the brains in a brain, it doesn't know the difference between what is actually real and what you think about or tell it that is real. So knowing that, let's all make a Speak Up and Stay Alive pact to only tell our brain positive things this year. Think in positive terms. Paint pretty mental pictures. Avoid gossipy yipping and yapping. This year, let's tell our brains that we are healthy and happy. Now, that's not to say that we ignore all of the dangerous stuff that's going on around us, because when we choose to stick our heads in the sand, to pretend that we don't know about or recognize the many wrongs that seem to be occurring these days, when we don't speak up, our silence acts as implied consent to those who are doing wrong. I love this quote. As Samuel Adams so wisely stated, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men." So this coming year, I intend to set some brush fires, and I hope that you join me. And while this program is about healthcare and hospital safety, I find it impossible to stick with just the basics that one would expect to hear on a program such as this. So when I talk about hazards that affect our health and life that you have not heard about before, that are not discussed on the mainstream media, keep this in mind before you attempt to dispel my words. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as self-evident. Think about things in the past where that might have applied. And wrong does not cease to be wrong because the majority share in it. And that quote reminds me of what my mom used to rhetorically ask me in grade school. So if all of your friends were going to jump off a building, would you join them? And finally, facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. So with that introduction into this coming year, let's remember to feed ourselves positivity while at the same time staying sharp, paying attention to our surroundings, our environment, our government, business, advertising, and speaking up each and every time something requires our voice. It's going to be a fantastic year. Starting with today's program. So many times, the difference between a good experience and a bad one centers around communication. And to address that, later in the show, I have a guest here to talk about the language of caring, about doctor, nurse, and patient communication, as communication from the heart can improve every situation. And I'm going to address that right now, especially when it comes to communication at the end of a hospital stay. So let's get started, because right now, it's time for the hospital hazard of the week. Post-hospital syndrome. Did you ever watch the Charlie Brown specials where you hear the parents or the teachers talking and they sound like this? Well, that reminds me of when a patient checks out of a hospital. Family members are scrambling about, packing up clothes, flowers, and such. The car is running in the no parking zone, and the discharge nurse enters the room with a bunch of papers and begins. Wah, wah, wah. Everyone nods their heads, grabs the paper, and whoosh, out the door. I know about this firsthand and almost have to laugh, except that it really had the potential to be dangerous. The last time my mom was sent home from the hospital, a young nurse came in with the discharge papers and began to read them as if seeing those words for the first time. She mispronounced every few words and seemed to struggle with the entire encounter. I had no idea what she said and sat there feeling more sorry for her than I did for us. She knew nothing about my mom, why she had been there, what she had done. She was the assigned wah-wah to wah-wah-wah us out of there. Well, I recently read an article that began, "You've heard the expression, the treatment was successful, but the patient died," right? A Yale New Haven Hospital Center for Outcomes Research and Evaluation director, Dr. Harlan Krumholtz, has noticed the worrisome post-hospital syndrome phenomenon, which he described last January in the New England Journal of Medicine. After patients are appropriately treated for their condition and discharged, they, quote, have heightened risk of myriad conditions, many of which appear to have little in common with the initial diagnosis, unquote. Dr. Krumholtz refers to this as post-hospital syndrome, a combination of new metabolic disorders, pneumonia, gastrointestinal maladies, mental illness, and other problems that often bring the patient back to the hospital within 30 days. He says that sleep deprivation, multiple medications, inactivity, and monotonous hospital surroundings, especially in the intensive care unit, may be contributing factors. And we've talked about intensive care psychosis on the show before. So while patients get their diagnosed illnesses treated during their hospital stays, some can leave the hospital a lot worse off than how they came in. Why? Because in the process of giving life-saving therapies, healthcare providers are often unaware that the dehydration, malnutrition, deconditioning, and information overload that happened during a hospital stay may have long-term consequences to the cognitive function of vulnerable patients. But hospital teams don't seem to think about this. The discharge people do their thing. Wah, wah. Here's how to take your medication. Wah, wah, wah. See your doctor in 2 weeks. Wah, 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 wah. Try not to eat salt. But patients don't hear a word and can't recall any of it the next day. And that leads to patients getting readmitted. And of course, hospitals and physicians who treat their patients are very concerned about preventing those, not only because they want the best for their patients, but also because they now suffer reimbursement cuts up to 3% of their Medicare-based payments if their readmission rates are higher than expected. But let's get back to hospital delirium for a moment, because recent studies have found that delirium developed in 74% of patients after their hospital stay. I mean, that's a huge number. At 3 months after discharge, 40% still had cognition scores 1.5 standard deviations below the mean scores for their age and educational levels, almost similar to patients with a traumatic brain injury. And this part is important. The big variable was the duration of delirium that patients endured while actually a patient within the intensive care unit. So the longer the delirium persisted, the more likely the patient would suffer cognitive impairment, which affects ability to plan, think, or organize. The effect was seen as long as 1 year after discharge. So it's easy to understand that a disoriented patient who receives the typical wah, wah, wah discharge instructions will be at a risk for post-hospital syndrome and very likely readmission back to the hospital. So if you're looking after someone in the hospital, think about delirium and its causes, because as we've just seen, the effects of hospital delirium don't end at the hospital. Here's a few things I did to help my mom avoid some of the causes of delirium. They will help you too. Monitor drugs and their side effects. Ask for the daily MARS, MARS, stands for Medication Administration Record Sheets. These are produced every day, so your nurses know what medications to give you. And you have a right to have a copy. Now you will know what is given, the dose, and you can monitor any changes in medication. In fact, I took it a step farther and requested that no medications be added or subtracted until I was made aware. In this way, I could monitor the side effects to be sure that any changes in my mom's state of mind either were or were not caused by the drugs. Secondly, instruct your providers not to wake you or your patient in the middle of the night for things like bathing, testing, vital signs, and so on, unless, of course, it's important to your health to do so. Next, coordinate the room lighting with day and night. Open the shades and let natural light in the room during the day, and in the evening, pull the blinds, lower the lights, and close the door as much as possible to reduce light and noise. Dehydration and malnutrition are two important factors when it comes to delirium that you don't typically hear about. And I wrote about this in my book because I experienced some very dangerous nutritional lapses during my mom's 4-month hospital stay that I won't go into today. But suffice it to say, the dietary and nutritional staff would have received a failing grade had I been their teacher. So be mindful of meal selection, mealtime, and offer adequate amounts of liquids. And finally, a deconditioned body is a body ripe to fail. And that is why physical therapy throughout a hospital stay is of paramount importance. Again, I wrote about this in my book because we had, or I should say, as the advocate, I had to fight daily to get someone from the physical therapy department to work with my mom each day. It's plain stupid to think that a patient can lie in a bed for 24 hours a day and then get discharged to go home and magically be coordinated and stable. Daily physical therapy is vital to offset coordination issues and the loss of stamina and strength. That's how and why post-hospital falls occur, creating a readmission. Well, these are all reasonable requests and things you should look out for during a hospital stay, and you should feel confident to ask your providers to help you achieve these requests. And at discharge time, to avoid post-hospital syndrome, ask the Charlie Brown parents to slow down and explain in clear, understandable language what you need to do to stay safe at home. Have a family member, or 2 or 3, attend this meeting. Ask to have a nurse or doctor who knows your particular situation to be present. And now, I'll stop talking. Wah, wah, wah. And with that, let's hear some legal news you can use. You've heard me talk about my attorney friends at Schraff & King, and I know many of you have taken my advice and contacted them to help you with your advance directives. Things like a healthcare power of attorney, living will, help with information about the Do Not Resuscitate form, and more. Attorneys certified in elder law offer you something that other attorneys do not. So don't go anywhere else. Contact the folks at Schraff & King today. They're located in Willoughby Hills, just south of State Route 6 and Interstate 91. And you can call them at 440-585-1600. That's 440-585-1600. Or visit them online at schraffking.com, SCHRAFFKING, schraffking.com. And be sure to let them know that you heard about them here on Speak Up and Stay Alive. Again, it's 440-585-1600, 440-585-1600. Call them today.
Listen to Pat Rouleau and Speak Up and Stay Alive RadiOh. Stay safe from little-known healthcare and hospital hazards. To learn more, go to speakupandstayalive.com. That's speakupandstayalive.com.
You are listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive, Patient Safety Radio and Patient Experience Radio, two different media resources that focus on improving our healthcare and hospital experiences. Speak Up and Stay Alive, Patient Safety Radio is the nationally syndicated radio program heard on radio and television stations throughout the country, and Patient Experience Radio is our very own digital radio station, an online resource for providers, patients, and patient experience vendors to meet others and learn about their products and services via recorded interviews. And today I have a special guest who is appearing on both of these stations because as a lifelong activist for creating healing experiences for patients, families, and the entire healthcare team, she has an important message to share. She is Wendy Leebov, internationally respected as a thought leader, healthcare executive, culture change strategist, coach, and author who has helped hospitals, health systems, and medical practices to achieve breakthroughs in the patient and family experience. But before making her mark as champion of the International Patient Experience Movement, Wendy was vice president and change coach for the Albert Einstein Healthcare Network in Philadelphia, where she worked for 20 years. She earned a doctorate and master's degree from Harvard University and a BA in sociology anthropology from Oberlin College. She is a breast cancer survivor and has been a watchful and engaged family member through the prolonged life-threatening illnesses of her sister, mother, and friends. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But as a self-described communication fanatic, Wendy has written 14 books on the patient experience, leadership, and service excellence. Also, she created the acclaimed web-based program, The Language of Caring for Staff, and The Language of Caring for Physicians with Dr. Carla Rotering. Her latest co-authored book is The Language of Caring Guide for Physicians, and I have a copy of it right here on my desk. There's so much more to know, but I'm excited to get started. So welcome to the show, Wendy.
Thank you, Pat, and sounds like my mother helped you with that wonderful introduction.
Hey, it's all the truth and more.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. We're glad to have you too. Now, I want to give our listeners a bit of a background. Wendy and I were set to do this interview several weeks ago when I received an email from Wendy, sadly stating that she would have to reschedule because her sister was dying and she was spending her last days with her. And throughout that entire time, I often thought about her and wondering how the whole patient family experience would look to Wendy through her highly experienced lens. I was wondering, was it different for her since she teaches and trains physicians and providers about how to improve the patient experience? Or at a time like that, was she less aware, more aware? So Wendy, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump right in the middle just for a moment before we talk about your company, Language for Caring. As a patient experience professional, what did you come away with or from with the time spent with your sister?
I've been involved with my sister during 8 years of her illnesses, ups and downs, really terrible acute illnesses multiple times. And despite all my experience in the patient experience movement, as a family member, I always felt vulnerable and frequently powerless and, extremely anxious. So, when the tables are turned and, I'm filled with anxiety, I don't feel like the expert on what's going on at all. And people in my family would look to me and say, Wendy, you know how to deal with this. Go intervene. And I'd be shaking in my boots because I was a vulnerable and scared, very protective and anxious family member. So I think I didn't feel like I was at a big advantage. Was I more aware because of the field that I'm in? No doubt. I mean, I could become extremely angry if I heard one unkind word. I wanted to jump right in and be my sister's advocate, and I frequently did. But I would say I was hypervigilant because of my patient experience work. Now, on the good side of it is that going through so many experiences with my sister, I had some major lessons learned. I mean, my sister was so ill, had so many bouts of pain and loss of functions, and really, went through a terrible few years. And through all this time, people called her the difficult patient. And, and yet, I was her sister, and I knew what she was going through. And one of the biggest learnings I had from my sister's experience is I won't use the word difficult patient anymore. I say difficult for me patient. Yes. Because, patients are just so distressed. We don't know their experience, and I'm not giving them excuses for acting out or being rude or abusive or anything like that. I'm just saying that I think a lot of caregivers have no idea what the patient's going through, and to label them difficult patient is like blaming the victim of illness, the person who is out of control and desperate about their own health. So anyway, my experience with my sister, bless her heart, was produced a lot of learning for me that certainly applies to the passion I have for the patient experience.
Right. Well, I just want to extend our condolences to you on your sister's behalf.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I thought of you the entire time. Just felt, wow, she's going through this situation, knowing all the things that she does because she teaches this. I was just very curious to find out if that helped, hindered, or what it did. And what you're saying is exactly what I hear from other physicians when I interview them and speak with them, that once they became the patient, or once a very close family member was the patient, like all bets were off. They no longer felt empowered. They were afraid to ask, and they became just how the normal average person feels. And I'm going to imagine that for you, and especially in your work, this is going to bring a whole another level and a whole level of awareness to you that you may not have had prior.
I think it will.
Yeah, I do too. Well, the question is, why is the patient experience such a mystery?
I could answer so many ways. I could say, well, it's not such a mystery.
Exactly.
Or I could say it's a mystery because, the healthcare system doesn't encourage. There's so many things about the healthcare system that don't encourage the patient's voice. And if you're not tuned into the patient's voice, then you're going to be fishing in dark waters to try to provide a great experience. Because if people are too anxious to speak up, or they don't have an advocate who speaks up for them, or they're maybe not so good at articulating in detail what's going on for them, we're in the dark about how to best serve them. So I think that's a big issue, and I don't think that the healthcare system until recently has been set up to encourage patients to voice what's going on with them. I think it's a mystery because we're in the dark about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Thankfully, we're doing a lot to now do more measurement, to do interviews, to do real-time information collection to find out what's happening with patients, and we're working hard with physicians, nurses, and other staff to ask questions differently so patients do open up, because that's the only way we're going to be able to really meet their needs.
Exactly. Ask the patient. You say, and I don't know if this was in your book or on your website, but talking about the measurement idea and how you act upon that, you said that hospitals and physicians are focusing on improving the patient experience, and many tackle the challenge by targeting one survey item at a time. And we're talking about the surveys that the patients get once they're discharged from the hospital. For instance, if a hospital gets a low score on the question, how often do nurses do everything possible to help me with my pain? Well, then it might focus on better pain management. And of course, the survey includes many questions, and focusing on one item at a time leads to a revolving door of strategies that you call tackling one survey item after another, the shotgun approach. And so then you talk about the other method is the bowling approach. So when you bowl, you aim for the sweet spot. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Well, the sweet spot is caring communication. If you focus on one goal of helping people speak the language of caring in all of their interactions, what you find is all of those specific survey items go up, because the fact is communication is key to everything, every important outcome. So let's take something like pain. When patients answer a question about how well did the caregivers manage their pain, they're not only talking about how much pain they had, but how much sensitivity and empathy the caregiver had for their pain. My favorite example is, the patient cries out in pain, and the nurse says, how would you rate your pain from 1 to 10? Or, let me talk to the doctor, maybe there's something else we could give you. Or, you can't have your pain meds for another 20 minutes. In other words, the patient's crying out in pain, and the response is to try to fix the problem, and which is a good intention, but in the process, the nurse is not communicating caring. I mean, the patient is listening for the nurse to say, I'm so sorry, you're in pain. I want to help. Mm-hmm. So what's missing in the communication is, I'm so sorry, you're in pain, I want to help. And without that element of caring communication, you're going to get a bad score on the question about pain management. And you're going to get a much better score if you've been empathetic in that way, even if the pain continued. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's one example of how the communication affects the score, and that's true with hospital noise and how well your medication was explained to you, and all the specific HCAHPS and CGCAHPS survey items. They're all elevated by strengthening communication of caring. So that's the bowling ball, the sweet spot. If you hit that, if you do a good job with caring communication, then all the pins, or in this case, the survey items, are impacted.
Right, right.
You know, the first thing people ask is, but I am caring, you know, well, how can you imply that I'm not? When I talk about caring communication, I'm assuming people are caring. I don't have any doubt that people who enter healthcare are caring people. The question is there caring coming across? And so caring on the inside and making your caring felt in every interaction, they're two different things. So, and a lot of people don't have the skills for making their caring felt, for expressing their caring. And that's where my focus is. It's assuming people are caring. That's no issue. People mean well. They want to do right by patients and families. How do they make sure that in addition to dealing with the tasks or the business at hand in caring for people, they are also coming across as the caring person they are?
Mm-hmm. Think about say just in a doctor's office where the doctor rushes in and out of all of these rooms and looks at the chart real quickly, and you know that he's got to be or she's got to be thinking about the previous room as he or she enters your room, and how they might not be totally present there with you. And you get that feeling sometimes as a patient. So if the doctor could just come in and just take a deep cleansing breath and make some eye contact and be mindful right in that moment with you.
Yeah, and you know, Pat, what's made that even more challenging to physicians is the use of computers and electronic medical records.
Thank you.
Physicians running in and out.
Yep.
And they might sit and they're staring at a computer and losing the connection with you. So there are some best practices that were identified in research at Kaiser Permanente about how does the physician or the nurse use the computer and remain patient-centered, and so there's skill in that too, and that the best practices turns out to be, you know, big news to people. They don't realize that if you try to pay attention to the patient at the same time that you're reading or entering information into the medical record, the patient feels like chopped liver. Yep. Like, hello, I'm the patient, excuse me. And what works so much better is being fully mindful to the computer than fully mindful to the patient. So when you're actually talking to the patient or the patient's talking to you, you know, you need to be completely focused on the patient as if they're the most important person in your world at that time. And then say, excuse me a moment, I want to jot that down here in your record so I don't forget. So alternate in between focusing fully on the computer, which makes you efficient, and focusing fully on the patient. And then the patient feels like the experience was enhancing and not insulting.
You must be reading my mind, because I was going to say that was going to be my next question to you, that how can you be mindful now that technology has entered the healthcare scene, and you know, what should providers do to perhaps engage differently? And you answered that question really well. I can't tell you how many times I've had a doctor appointment and I know the freckles on the top of the guy's head, but I don't know what color his eyes are.
Yeah, they don't even say goodbye. They don't walk them to the door. They're just turning and typing while the patient is, you know, kind of thinking, are you done with me? Do I just walk out? Where do I go?
Yeah, don't let the screen door hit you on the way out.
Exactly.
I know. I think we can all relate to that. Now, that kind of leads me to something else I read about. You were talking about heart, head, heart. Explain that to us.
You know, people tend to be task-oriented. Mm-hmm. And frequently, if you were to listen to eavesdrop on interactions, most of what people are saying is what I call from the head. It's rational, it's about information, it's about the tasks or activities that they're involved in. And frequently there's no content happening that's from the heart. How would you rate the pain? The patient's crying out in pain. The nurse says, how would you rate the pain from 1 to 10? That's head communication. Or I'll see if the doctor has another idea. That's head, not heart. Whereas, I'm so sorry you're in pain, I want to help, is pure heart. So the heart, head, heart communication, actually, it's kind of gimmicky, but it's helpful to remember. I think of it as a sandwich. Mm-hmm. It's the ideal way to communicate is to start with heart, then move to the head messages, and then close with heart. And if you communicate in a heart, head, heart way, or using the heart, head, heart sandwich, people really know you care, and quickly, because heart just takes a sentence here and a sentence there, and you're dealing with the business at hand.
Right, right.
That, to me, is a complete, effective communication.
It is. It's a great sandwich. I like it.
Works with kids, too. Kids and spouses and mother-in-laws and everybody.
Isn't that the truth? I have to think about that. Heart, head, heart. I'll remember that great sandwich there. Now, in your workshops and classes and courses that you teach, is it all at top level, or are you working with hospital housekeepers, transporters? Because I've always thought that those are the folks that really have that opportunity to interact and engage with the patient. Probably they see them more often than maybe the surgeon or the doctor.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. We have two programs. One's called the Language of Caring for Staff, and one is the Language of Caring for Physicians.
Okay.
And the Language of Caring for Staff focuses on everybody in the organization in every nook and cranny, because in fact all the frontline people have the most opportunity to impact the patient experience, and probably the least training and really good hearts. Everybody can speak the language of caring. It doesn't depend on your degrees or anything like that. So I'm all for engaging everybody in every role, including people in the back rooms. Everybody ultimately affects the patient experience.
I agree with that. And I just think about the housekeepers so often because, their role is so important, not only from the patient safety and the cross-contamination side of it, but just as you say, from that patient experience side. And we could even reverse that as well. A lot of patients don't give any regard or interest to the housekeepers. And wow, what a difference it would make in their day if the patient or the family member would just say, hey, thanks for cleaning my sister's room, or thanks for emptying the trash. That makes my room feel better.
Actually, in my experience, especially reading one patient survey after another, frequently patients say that the person I felt closest to in the organization was the housekeeper.
Yep, I agree. Well, Wendy, are we missing anything that you want to talk about today?
I wouldn't mind raising one more point, and that is that I think a key to improving the patient experience is to become much more tuned into patient anxiety and really design elements of the patient experience so that we prevent anxiety where we can, or we handle it in a way that reduces it when we can't prevent it. And anxiety reduction hasn't gotten enough attention. Too much attention focused on surface elements like amenities and courtesy. And, nurses used to say, don't make me come to charm school. And that was because the focus was not on the challenges that are different in healthcare. And the biggest challenge that's different in healthcare from other retail businesses is anxiety. I mean, people are plagued by anxiety. And the extent to which we can ease it, relieve it, or prevent it tends to translate into a much more positive patient experience. So I just plug that because I think if you ask the question, how could we be reducing patient anxiety, a lot of people can come up with answers. And I think in working on the patient experience, we haven't asked that question often enough.
You're right. That is the difference between a hotel and a restaurant and a hospital. Those folks in those locations typically don't have that anxiety that you do in a hospital.
I think, all the Ritz-Carlton type solutions, they're good because they do help to create an overall healing or soothing environment.
Right.
But there is no avoiding the need to focus on the interaction and to really tune into the individual. And that's where you just have to get involved with dealing with anxiety, because that is the healthcare customer, quote unquote.
You are so fantastic. I just love having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
I do. There's just so much to learn from you. But let's
You're a fun interviewer too, loaded with energy.
Oh, thank you. I have the passion as well, and I'm very interested to make things better. And when I meet somebody like yourself, it's like, oh, I could just spend a couple days with you talking and thinking about these things. It's exciting to brainstorm.
Well, likewise. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, now, where can our listeners find out more about you and what you do in the language of caring?
Well, our website is www.languageofcaring.com. And there's all kinds of information there about our programs and our people and how we can help people tackle their particular challenges.
Excellent.
www.languageofcaring.com.
Great. And before we part today, do you have any final words of advice for us?
I want to say to the listening audience, I so admire your care and energy that you're devoting to making the patient experience, the family experience, a better experience for people.
Wow, what a pleasure to have the opportunity to spend with you, and I just thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
And folks, you'll find this interview on both websites, speakupandstayalive.com and patientexperienceradio.com, so you can find them both there. So head to those sites and please be sure to share with your friends. And remember to also pay a visit to languageofcaring.com.
Get ready. Now,
Your host, Pat Rouleau.
I'm not too excited today.
You better get excited. What do we need, an exciting pill?
I guess.
Are you excited, Eric? Guys are so fun. All right. Ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
You're listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive, Patient Safety Radio. We are also on the XDS Cumulus satellite for every other radio station in the country to pick up. So if you have friends or family who live in another city or state and would like for them to hear this show, tell them to contact their local program director, and they can very easily pick up the show and add it to their current lineup. I am your hostess, Pat Rouleau, so happy to spend this time with you to help you survive any healthcare or hospital encounter. Well, it's that time again. It's time for everyone's favorite game. What is it, Bob?
I have no idea. What are we playing today?
Shocking news.
Oh, shocking news from around the world.
You got
Okay.
Shocking news from around the world.
We have our two usual radio rivals.
I'm Eric, and I'm a regionally famous radio producer from Northeast Ohio.
And it's always a pleasure to have a regionally famous radio producer in-house.
And that's me. I'm Bob, and I'm from Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Oh, Bob, is that all?
That's it.
Okay, it's a short day today, folks. All right, we have our two usual radio rivals. So as a reminder, here's how it goes. I will read a health-related statement, and you'd have to decide if it's true, or as we call it, a shock.
Wow.
Or is it false? We call it a crock. Oh. All right, guys, ready to go?
Go for it.
Let's do it.
All right. Here is the Speak Up and Stay Alive shocking news number 1. Chinese police have uncovered an illegal food storage site in China's southern city of Nanning that reportedly contained chicken feet nearly a half-century old. Is that a shock, or is it a crock?
I'm going to say it's a shock. For some reason, I figure that there's some aged feet around, and they probably stink, too.
I'm going to say it's a shock. I can't articulate a reason why, just a gut feeling.
You're both right.
Wow.
Yep, it's a shock. According to the South China Morning Post, more than 20 tons of expired meat were seized in this raid, including beef tripe, cartilage, and the aforementioned chicken feet, some of which dated all the way back to 1967.
Wow.
The site was busted back in May, though the details of the operation have only begun to be made public recently. Apparently, the chicken feet were smuggled across the border from Vietnam, still frozen, and once in China, they were processed with various chemicals, including bleach,
Oh, boy.
to add weight and improve their coloring, making them appear fresh. At the end of August, then, the Obama administration quietly decided to start allowing Chinese poultry processors to ship processed chicken into the United States. For now, the meat must originate either in the U.S. or in another country where the poultry population has been certified to be safe. But what that means is that chickens from the U.S. will be shipped all the way over to China, processed in plants over there, and then shipped back across the Pacific Ocean for us to eat.
That's scary.
That's a little too convoluted.
According to a U.S. Senator Charles Schumer, a USDA report that Congress has seen indicates that China will likely be allowed to directly import their own chicken into this country within a year. And what makes this even more disturbing is that a country of origin label will not be required on any of the chicken that is processed in China. So in the years ahead, you could be eating chicken processed in China and not even know it. Moral of the story is eat less boomerang chicken, right? Any more comments, Eric?
No.
All right. All right, guys, here's the Speak Up and Stay Alive shocking news number 2. Soon, your kitchen will be serenaded by musical appliances. Is that a shock or is it a crock?
Now, I'm going to say it's a shock because I figure that with all these smart things that they're doing, smart telephones, smart everything, that there's going to be some smart chips that play music.
Not even just singing, probably weather reports and such, too.
Oh, I never thought of that.
A radio within the appliances.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you guys, you're right. It is a shock. Actually, stupidly, it's a shock. Wow. GE already has 4 dishwasher models that play music during power on, power off, and at the end of the cycle. Music is such as sophisticated piano music, garage band style, to have your own special music, brass and wind, and soon you'll be able to have personalized appliance sounds similar to having that special ringtone on your mobile phone.
Well, that's exciting.
It's really necessary?
No.
Like it's like a sound like that Windows makes when it turns on.
Mm-hmm. Doo-doo-doo. Well, speaking of dishwashers, I held an electromagnetic meter up against my dishwasher to test the amount of electricity that it emits, and actually I was just totally floored. Even in the off mode, that thing is throwing off dangerous levels of EMF fields, and as they become cumulative, they're dangerous to your health. So the moral of the story is I no longer stand next to my dishwasher while preparing meals. Everyone actually really should know the readings of EMF and radio frequencies within their homes. And I guess I soon, though, will be listening to the radio from my dishwasher.
Probably. We might hear our show from the dishwasher.
Any comment, Eric?
No.
Done with that one. All right, guys, here's the Speak Up and Stay Alive shocking news number 3. Flossing your teeth may prevent you from Alzheimer's. Is that a shock or is it a crock?
I'm going to say crock just because I don't know what connection teeth have with the brain.
Okay. What do you say, Bob?
I'm going to say it's a shock because I think there's some nerve endings there that could be affected to the brain.
Bobby? You're right.
Wow. Oh.
It is a shock. A British study found bacteria from gum disease in brain samples of some people who died of Alzheimer's. Not really sure what that connection is, but remember, guys, brushing is not enough. You have to remember to floss every day if you want to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you floss, Eric?
No, but yeah, now I'm reconsidering that.
He's already forgetting to floss, right? All right, guys, here's the Speak Up and Stay Alive shocking news number 4. Teenagers with recurring headaches should chew more gum to alleviate the pain. Is that a shock or is it a crock?
I'm going to say that one's a crock. For some reason, I just think it's a crock.
Okay. Eric?
Again, I don't know. I'm just not familiar with the connection between the teeth and the brain, so I'll just say, again, a crock.
All right, you're both right. It is a crock. That is not true. In fact, Dr. Nathan Wattenberg of Tel Aviv University has found that gum-chewing teenagers and younger children as well are giving themselves headaches by chewing gum. His findings, published in Pediatric Neurology, could help treat countless cases of migraine and tension headaches in adolescents without the need for additional testing or medication. One study suggested, and this is going to explain it, that gum chewing causes stress to the temporomandibular joint, the TMJ. Understand that?
I don't understand it, but go ahead.
The place where the jaw meets the skull.
Oh, okay, got you.
Okay. The other study blames aspartame, the artificial sweetener used in most popular chewing gums.
Oh, wow.
So TMJ dysfunction has been shown to cause headaches, while the evidence is mixed on the aspartame. So
best thing is just don't chew gum.
Kids, you got to step away from the cell phone, spit out the gum, and don't eat boomerang chicken.
You got it.
Do you chew gum?
Yeah.
My gosh. This show is doing you a world of good, right? It's going to spit out the gum and floss his teeth. Oh.
Yeah? Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Speak Up and Stay Alive. Shocking news number 5. I said I wasn't going to do it, but alas, I cannot contain myself. Plus, I received many calls from listeners, actually, who enjoy hearing about our favorite little guy. So here it is. The naked mole rat was named Vertebrae of the Year for 2013. Is that a shock or is it a crock?
I'm going to say it's a shock.
Oh wow! I didn't even know there was such an award. I'll just say shocked because I want to believe.
Yay, it is true. It's a shock. And we've known that for quite a while around here, thanks to Eric, right?
You got it.
The naked mole rat can now add that honor to its impressive list of distinctions. The long-living subterranean rodent has been named Vertebrae of the Year by Science magazine.
Oh, boy.
You know why?
Why?
All right, let's go on. Science, one of the world's leading journals on scientific research and news, notes that naked mole rats will never win a beauty contest.
That's true.
We know that. But may hold a lesson or two for humans when it comes to warding off cancer. And we've talked about that before. So as we've discussed, the naked mole rat has carved out a reputation for healthy living. They can live as long as 30 years and stay healthy right up to the end. And that includes never getting cancer. In fact, when the naked mole rat cells are induced to form a tumor, the rodents stop the threat almost immediately.
Uh-oh.
Wow. So we need to hear a round of applause for the naked mole rat.
Yay.
Woo! Any more comments about that? I know, Eric, you're thrilled about this, yeah?
I feel vindicated. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to bring up the naked mole rat out of nowhere, on that past show when I first mentioned it, but
we've taken it to heart here. It's become our favorite.
You know what I think is great?
What?
This is for Jerry. She likes to hear about the naked mole rat.
One of our listeners loves the naked mole rat. Well, here it is, Jerry. We did not disappoint, right?
You got it.
All right. Well, that was especially informative today, right, guys?
You got it.
We learned about old Chinese chicken feet, musical dishwashers, don't forget to floss, and Alzheimer's, teenagers, gum and headaches, and the 2013 Vertebrae of the Year,
naked mole rat.
The naked mole rat. We have world-famous guests all the way down to the subterranean naked mole rat. So once again, I am compelled to ask, on what other patient safety radio show will you experience this kind of life-changing information?
What other patient safety radio show is there?
There's not.
There's not. You guys, thank you, Bob, for being such a good sport.
You're welcome.
And Eric, thank you for being regionally famous and for indulging our foolishness.
You're welcome.
All right.
Shocking news from around the world.
And now, folks, don't move an inch. There is so much more you can learn about healthcare and hospital safety and the naked mole rat on America's favorite and perhaps only patient safety radio show, Speak Up and Stay Alive, RadiOh.
You got it.
You did good, guys.
Good.
You can keep it running.
Keep going.
All right.
If you know me, you know that I'm concerned about healthcare-acquired infections. Stethoscopes have long been associated with the transmission of healthcare-related bacterial infections, and studies have shown that stethoscopes carry harmful bacteria such as staph. To eliminate the infection risk, doctors simply need to wipe their stethoscopes with a disinfectant swab after use on each patient. Despite this, a report in the American Journal of Infection Control makes it clear that providers do not heed the warnings, concluding that doctors must routinely disinfect their stethoscopes before and after each patient contact. There is, however, a viable alternative to the disinfectant cloth or wipe. Clean Stethoscope, offered through a company called Cleanant, is a device that enables doctors, nurses, or any healthcare practitioner to both protect and clean their stethoscope with the greatest of ease. By sliding the bell of the stethoscope into the Clean Stethoscope chamber, doctors can examine multiple patients without putting themselves or their patients at risk of healthcare-acquired infections. If you're a healthcare provider or if you're a patient, check out Cleanant.com. Cleanint, Cleanant.com. And patients or family members, tell your doctor about Cleanant and ask that their practice include the Clean Stethoscope from Cleanant. Call 888-715-0464. That's 888-715-0464. You are listening to Speak Up and Stay Alive Patient Safety Radio, and I am your hostess, Pat Rulo, winding up the first program of the year, and always happy that you care enough to join me each week. It means a lot to me that you take the time to listen, to hear, and to take to heart what I have to share with you each week. And if you'd like to share my messages with your group, club, business, church, or hospital, I'm always happy to come out and speak at live presentations. So contact your church or senior or women's group, your local Rotary, Kiwanis, Recreation Center, library, whatever. Healthcare and hospital safety affects us all, and it's best to be prepared. And if you know me, you know that our events are fast-paced and loaded with take-home information that you can immediately use. So call me at 440-725-5462. That's 440-725-5462. Or email me at pat@speakupandstayalive.com. I'd love to meet you and share some quality time with your group. Oh, and speaking of usable information, be sure to visit our internet radio station, speakuptalkradio.com. speakuptalkradio.com for outstanding programming, shows such as Boil the Frog Slowly, Health Talk with Dr. Len, Living in the Psychic Realm and Psychics Gone Wild, Realty Universal Radio, The Gift of Choice, The Janet Love Show, The Vaccine Agenda, Those Weekend Golf Guys, and more. And we have a few new ones coming up. Mrs. Green's World will be on board pretty soon, and Animal Talk Naturally. Actually, I'm going to be having this gal as a guest on this show in a couple weeks. And again, you'll find these programs at the website speakuptalkradio.com. speakuptalkradio.com. So after the show, you can listen 24/7, all day and all night, until next week when you join me right here. Same time, same place, but never the same information. Until then, I hope you have a healthy and a happy week, free from wah, 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 Charlie Brown parents communication. I am Pat Rouleau, and I am your guide to safe and successful healthcare and hospital encounters.
Listen to Pat Rouleau and Speak Up and Stay Alive Radio. Stay safe from little-known healthcare and hospital hazards. To learn more, go to speakupandstayalive.com. That's speakupandstayalive.com.